Just what you want to hear, a bunch of cranky old white guys talking about numbers. Oh, put on a seatbelt for this one. A couple buddies of mine from the Heritage Foundation. Michael, thank you for being here. Michael Frank from the Heritage Foundation. Bill Beach, thank you for being here.
It's great to be here.
You know, there's nothing better than cranky white guys complaining about the debt. But let me ask you, it's tough to get the debt and how much we owe and how much we are going to under entitlements to make sense. I mean, I get lost between millions and billions and trillions, and after a while, it's. I mean, let me start over here. How bad is it? Put it in terms that a guy who barely cheated his way through algebra can understand.
Well, LeBron James. Everybody knows LeBron James. No cranky white guy there, right? He makes $46 million a year. So, to get an idea of how large $1 trillion is, this is the highest paid basketball player. How many years would he have?
46 million?
46 million. How many years would he have to work to make his first $1 trillion? And you know, it comes out to in the neighborhood of 28,000 years. That's $1 trillion. So it is
He played a lot of ball.
It's a lot of basketball.
28,000 years, not 2,800.
28,000 years. The average life. And
so I understand. So that's from Christ until now, 14 times.
14 times, 14 times, exactly, exactly.
And a lot of ball.
And that's just the first trillion. And the United States is in debt. Its gross debt, that's the United States government, its gross debt is now $16 trillion. So it's 16 times what 28,000 years would be. The average lifespan has about 2.4 billion seconds in it. So we're not even getting close to $1 trillion. 1 trillion seconds ago was the year 36,000 BC when Raquel Welch walked the earth. So I mean, it was just.
Now you're showing your age.
Exactly. and so you know these numbers are truly big. Now we have a big economy. We have $16 trillion as the size of the economy, and everybody knows it's a big economy. But when you think about the debt of just one government, which is the government of the United States, being as big as the entire economy, then you get a sense of the enormity. Now, why is that a problem? Not a single economy since 1802 that's amounted to anything, not a single economy has failed to slow when its gross debt gets as large as that economy. In fact,
what do you mean it fails to slow?
Well, the rate of economic activity, what some people call the growth rate, or how many jobs you're getting, or how fast your salary is going up, or, all those kinds of opportunities we kind of take for granted in this country. Every economy slows down when the debt gets to be just 70% the size of the economy. When it gets close to 90%, it slows down significantly with inflation. When it gets to be about 100% the size, then you're in a crisis, and we're seeing those.
And what are we here in the United States?
Well, the publicly owned debt, the debt that you and I and other governments own of the United States government, is about 73% the size of the economy right now. The gross debt, that is that debt that the public owns, plus the debt that government agencies owe each other, like Social Security lent a lot of money to the general government to buy stuff. That's now at 16 trillion, the full size of the economy. So we're in a slow economy. People say, why? Well, one reason is we've got a lot of debt that's bearing down on financial markets.
But, Michael, who cares? So this is that's accounting. So one guy owes a lot of other guys a lot of money.
Why would we care about it?
Why do I care?
Well, it's the high levels of debt are associated with the decline of empires of great nations. And I'll give you an example. Niall Ferguson, a great historian at Harvard and I think Oxford, wrote a piece a couple years ago in Foreign Affairs magazine. And he looked at a lot of the empires, the Roman Empire, British Empire, Napoleon's Empire, Soviet Union, and so on, and said that the two things are true when you study these empires. One is that the decline came more quickly than we remember. It usually happened very quickly within a decade or so that they hit some inflection point.
So in other words, the Roman Empire might have taken 500 years to build, but a decade to
roughly.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in other words, it's building things up. It takes a long. It's like my savings account. It takes a lifetime to build up, but I can one good big screen TV later, and it's gone.
Yeah. And he was then looked forward at the United States, and he said the reason why they declined, they hit that inflection point, is because of overextension, usually related to debt. They overextend. They take on too many debt obligations. And the United States is right at that point. This is 2 years ago. We've added a couple trillion more since then. was at that inflection point where we're one bad treasury auction away, or one bad downgrade from a rating company away, or one market event that could spook everybody away from that decline going on. And the scary thing, and Bill can fill in the details here, is that if the United States gets into these kinds of troubles, there's no other backstop. You know, if you're looking at the other nations that are having trouble, if Greece is having trouble, Germany right now is their backstop within the EU. If the EU has trouble,
we got China.
We're here.
China.
Bill can go into that detail. China is not going to be the backstop.
How much do we owe China?
They own 9% of our debt.
They own 9% of our debt.
Yeah, that's the Chinese government or the Chinese government bank's holdings. Now, throughout the...
Let's just not pay them back. What the hell do we care?
Let me give you another reason why you should care. Let's suppose that you're between the ages of 16 and 30. There are there's about 115 million people between the ages of 5 and 30. That's a full generation. With the economy slowing because of big debt, that means job opportunities are going to be less for them. That means that their wage growth is going to be slower. So how does that translate? It translates into practical things like deciding to get married later. These kids look out there in the world and they say, gosh, we're in love, we'd like to get married, you know, start a family and everything, but we just can't let's wait 2 years. So they wait 2 years, and now the median age for a man to get married is 27, for a woman.
And we know that ideally it should be about 50 or 60.
Yeah, about 50 or 60, right.
Yes.
It'll grow into be 29, it might be 30 during their lifespan.
But you're making an assumption that debt means that the economy is slowing.
It's not an assumption. The studies are now in, and there, as I said, there's not a single economy since 1802 which has built up its national debt to the point where if it reaches 70% of the size of that economy, the economy slows down. There's not a single exception to that, and we're not an exception either. So we have a future of suboptimal economic growth until this debt falls down below 70%. And again, if you're a young person, this translates into marrying later, fewer babies, a mortgage at a later time.
Help me understand that. You know, just because you don't have luck with women doesn't mean that other men aren't going to be able to find a woman and start a family because
a woman starts a family at 30. There is simply fewer pregnancies. If the median age for marrying gets up to 30 for a woman, there will be fewer pregnancies during that woman's fertile age period, and that means fewer babies. And of course, that translates back to a lower labor force growth. Less debt, less good debt. You know, it goes on and on.
If the debt is lowering the economy, lowering the growth, and getting a period of stagnation, a lost decade, maybe like Japan had, the person involved doesn't necessarily look at the balance sheet and make a decision. Well, we're not going to get married for an extra 6 or 8 or 12 months. What happens is they see that there's fewer opportunities out there, and they postpone it. Today, lead story in USA Today was about the lowest birth rate in U.S. history for some age groups of women. And for others, you have to go back 35, 40 years to get to a comparable low level. Combine that with the labor force participation rate going down to a 30-year low. People are leaving the workforce. There's a despondency, there's a frustration, there's a lack of faith in the future, whether it's starting families, having kids, or staying in the workforce. That's a problem.
Is it an easier way to think of it this way? We know what it's like when we charge up on our credit cards personally, and it feels good. It's great to get this stuff now. But if you're charging your credit card to pay your rent, you're going to have a problem.
Right.
You charge your credit card when you have the emergency, or you need to. But if you're doing it for something that you can't pay back, it builds, it builds, it builds, it builds,
And
it builds.
we're doing it for interest on the debt now.
And so, in essence, the federal government is doing just that. And we know that interest rates are nice and low, which is terrific. But sooner or later, that ain't going to be the case.
Exactly
and when they
right.
go back to a traditional norm of 5, 6, 7, 8%, or heaven forbid, back to Jimmy Carter years of 20%, 21%, that the money that government's going to be spending on governmental services, helping people out with Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security and health care, that money instead is going to have to go to pay the minimum balance, that little thing on your credit card that says how much. So how bad is this problem? We've only got a few minutes left. How bad is it, and how do you get out of it?
So we pay $240 billion a year right now at these really low interest rates and federal interest on the federal debt. If it goes back up to 3.5%, we'll be at about $600 billion additional spending per year. So this begins to now geometrically increase. This is why Moody's Investor Service told us 4 weeks ago that unless Congress acts after the election and before the beginning of the year, they're looking at a downgrade sometime in February.
To put that in English, downgrading
Yeah.
to say the debt
exactly.
is not good debt.
And that's that
the
trigger
chances
that
of a
Mike was
default
talking
are even higher.
Yeah, those are the triggers, and what it translates into at the micro level, at the personal level, is people start to see fewer opportunities, fewer avenues for success, and they get a little bit frustrated, and they start dropping out or lowering their expectations. And what you see in the society-wide is you see that dynamic of record numbers of people in their low and mid 20s living in their parents' basements, right? I mean, you have situations like that we make fun of.
Hey. My mom lives with me. I don't want to make that.
There you go. There you go.
All right.
Right.
So,
But you end up seeing it translate into people diminishing their expectations for the future in ways that translate down the road. They're not going to be making as much money to pay for our Social Security, Medicare needs, right? So when you multiply that out by millions and millions of people making these decisions today and lowering those expectations and those dreams and desires, you're in for a period. We'll probably make Japan's lost decade look pretty good.
Congress can act now and forestall and maybe even solve this. They need to act on Social Security and Medicare, not
Right away.
solve it entirely, but make some steps.
what steps? Be precise. We've only got a minute and a half here. What's the first step?
I think the first step is to raise the retirement age so that people who are now in their 40s can say that I'll be working until 67 and a half to 68 to gain full benefits. That's an easy thing to do. We ought to have a serious debate about whether or not somebody like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett should get Social Security and Medicare.
Why not? They paid into it.
Well, they haven't actually paid into it. They pay taxes which are immediately paid out in benefits. So there's no such thing as an account with your name on it where the
but
money's going.
if they've made payroll, that is, if they've got a payroll check, they pay payroll taxes.
Right.
Don't they have as much right to get something back for what they put in?
So what we've done is we've come up with a whole bunch of reforms, and we're going to take Social Security and Medicare and make them a very different program so that it's guaranteed forever, so people will always have them, and everyone will get benefits equal to 3.5, 4 times of poverty, which is a pretty good amount actually. But those people who are making more than $110,000, they won't get those benefits. They won't pay into the payroll taxes anymore either. That'll all be in the general fund. That gets you around a lot of language there, but there are ways to solve
People
this
want to get
problem.
more information. Where do they go?
Heritage.org, and we have the program Bill described. It's called Saving the American Dream, which is all over our website, so heritage.org.
Michael, thank you. Bill, thank you. And thank you. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Tell a friend about the Independence Institute. We'll see you next week.